Hello, friends. Father Charles. I'm here with a good friend of mine, Forrest, who is preparing to spend and actually relocate and move overseas. We're going to talk a little bit about his sense of call and who he is. So, Forrest, introduce yourself to us. Tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so my name's Forrest, and I guess the easiest way to answer that question is to say that I grew up in the church. It's been sort of a part of my life since before I was born. And during my college years, I sort of walked away from the faith a little bit. I became an agnostic for a number of reasons. And God sort of orchestrated my life to a place that I needed to be to meet Him in a new way. And it was several years later, a few years after I graduated college, that I began to become familiar with apologetics and particular characters in that realm, Ravi Zacharias, William Lane Craig, others, and it really changed my life. And I realized after several years of study in that on my own in that field that God had led me down this path and given me the experiences, the background, the education, the passion that I have, because He was preparing me for a calling to be an apologist. And so, since about 2013, I've been doing that with my local church in Nashville, where I live, teaching discipleship, engaging with the skeptic and the doubter in coffee shops and other places, just to affirm their questions and to try and present Christianity and the gospel and the truth of Jesus Christ as something worth considering reasonably. And now I'm taking that package, as it were, to France.
Excellent. Now, if I don't have a degree in theology, what do you mean by apologetics? Are you going around saying we're so sorry we've been a bit bad to you, or?
Yes. So apologetics is a word that comes from the Greek word apologia, which simply means to speak in defense. In the Christian context, it comes to us. The most famous verse of it is 1 Peter 3:15, which is, honor the Lord Christ in your heart always, being ready to give an answer to those who ask of you why you have hope, but do it with gentleness and respect. And so that give an answer, give a reason, make a defense, depending on what translation you're looking at. That's the Greek word apologia.
So kind of like in the South, when your mama says, boy, give an account of what you've been doing. Right? That's an apology.
Or if you were late for curfew or something like that, and you had to justify. That's another good way of thinking about it, is a justification.
Car almost ran out of gas, had to stop, then
flat tire.
It was a nightmare. Thanks be to God I made it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you became an agnostic at some point after high school and kind of struggled with that. What was that about? I think that's a struggle a lot of people have, and it's like, does this really make sense? Or the kind of question I think of is, why bother? Why do I want to bother getting up early on a Sunday morning and going to church? Why do I want to bother praying or any of that?
Yeah, I think the struggle that I had is really in the question is this true? You come into college and you are encountering all kinds of new ideas, new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at the world. And college is a very secularized place. It's very much influenced by naturalism and the Enlightenment and the Renaissance.
And we even went to a Presbyterian college, and that was the case.
Right, yeah. And it's actually, in some cases, it's worse at seminaries. But
seminary where faith goes to die.
Yeah, in some cases it can be more dangerous to go there than a regular school. But I really started asking the question, why am I a Christian? And I started looking at the reasons why I would give to answer that, and none of them seemed to satisfy, even as a freshman, a critical look. And I started to think about, being a Christian versus being some other thing, and really just didn't find any connecting points to truth. And of course, I started out actually as a physics major. I don't know if you knew that,
I
but I
didn't know
started
that.
out as a physics
So
major.
much math.
And in that world, in the movie that came out like a year or so ago, the Story of Everything, I think it was a biopic about Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
He called cosmology sort of a religion for atheists. And just sort of having that mind, a scientific mind, and seeing these things and all of these discussions, and a very common idea that's in that world is that we don't need God anymore. We have science to explain the universe. And so it wasn't that I actively or intentionally said I don't believe in this anymore. It was just that if you were to really push me and ask me, or if I were to really seek deep down in my own spirit, the answer was I don't know. I don't know what's real. I don't know if I can believe this. There's just an issue of truth that was there for me. And after I graduated with a master's degree in theology, I started to read, listen to lectures and podcasts and things like that from these apologists. And it was like the first time I was hearing historic biblical Christianity being defended in an articulate way, in an eloquent way, in a loving way, and in a convincing way. And I started to do my own research at that point, and I read so much during that time on both sides. I read atheists, agnostics, Christians, just about anything I could get my hands on, any debate that was on YouTube. I was just soaking it in, and it reaffirmed my faith. God put people in my life to sort of revive and rebuild my faith. And from then, I realized that God had given me a passion and a broken heart for people who struggle with that. And that's, I think that's where the passion for me comes from. Is just a brokenness for people who have questions that for whatever reason haven't been answered or even affirmed, and who have doubts, who have Ravi Zacharias will talk about apologetics as being a process of removing bushes so that people can have a clear view of Jesus. And so whatever that is, whether it's a scientific concept or historical, critical, anything, it's like, well, let's talk about that. Let's look at that. Let's see what's really there. And invite the Holy Spirit into that process and and just walk with them. Sometimes an epiphany can happen in a short period of time. Sometimes it takes years of developing a relationship for someone to move toward Christ.
So why do you as a man bother? Why bother with the whole Christianity thing? Why bother following Jesus? Why bother living differently to be a disciple? Ostensibly being a disciple changes the way you live. Why? What makes it worth it?
Well, I think in one short way to answer that is that if Jesus was who he claimed to be, then he would have had to have been the smartest person who ever lived. And his information about what the good life is, what the good life looks like, and how to acquire it would be worth listening to and worth following. And so I think that being the case is one good reason, is it's just simply the best way to live. I think one of the things that we find now is that people are routinely seeking satisfaction in their life from all manner of things, whether it be fame, fortune, career, family, all sorts of things, you name it. And they're always coming up empty in the end. And I think, C.S. Lewis said, "When I find in myself desires that this world cannot satisfy, I must therefore conclude I was made for another world." And so I think that God being the source of life and Christ being his reconciliation of us who were estranged from that source back into right relationship. It's just like you can't brew coffee if you don't plug it into the outlet.
Yeah.
You know, and so for me, bothering is, on the one hand, it's true, and I think that's the most important pursuit in any life, is the pursuit of truth, and that in all kinds of things, whether it's in a trial case or faith. You know, it's the most important pursuit that there is the pursuit of truth. And Lewis also says this. He said that he thought when he was chasing truth that he was coming to a place, and he found out in the end that he had come to a person, the person of Jesus Christ. And I think that changes the game, because it's not a esoteric, abstract concept truth, but it's a person in Jesus Christ, and following him is how I can be and become what God created me to be. And there's not really any other path to take.
It's who God meant for you to be friends with him.
Yes. I think that's the thing. You know, it's interesting. One of my mentors used to always say, he was like, okay, so the greatest commandment, that is, obey the Lord your God.
It's love.
And obey your neighbor as yourself. And he's like, well, that's not right. It's love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And I think that that's quintessentially and necessarily a relational thing. God is a person. Jesus is a person. The Holy Spirit is a person. And we are invited into this relationship that benefits only us. Right? You know, God isn't diminished when somebody, he's not a fairy. You don't have to clap to bring him back to life, you know?
That's Julie Roberts.
Yeah. He's not diminished in any of his character or his divinity when someone doesn't believe in him. That person is cut off from the source of life. So it's an interesting thing, because God has invited us into this relationship for our sake. And you see this as a repeated pattern. I mean, the law was given for us, for our sake, for our good, because he loved us. We're invited in this relationship for our sake. And out of that relationship is born the fruits of the Spirit and a desire. I mean, anybody who's been in any kind of relationship with someone that they were attracted to, be it, you know, a young boy and a young girl, or husband and wife, or whatever, will know that just being in that relationship elicits responses from us. You know, you'll go and you'll do something, not because you're trying to pay back for some mistake that you made. You lost too many brownie points, and so you need to go buy flowers. I mean, that happens.
Yeah.
But there's also a reality that I'm just doing this because it's out of the overflow of the love I have in this relationship. And so our activity, our life, and what we do, whether, you know, in prayer, joining with the community of believers, acts of service, all of these things that we do as a response to God's love and invitation to relationship, not for that invitation or relationship.
Fantastic. Friends, we will put ways to get in touch with what Forrest is doing down in the comments below. Be sure to like and share the video.
Thank you.